Hello friends, welcome to Mind Matters. I am Anjan Muralidharan. This is part 3 of the series, Human Mind. If you haven't watched the previous 2 episodes, please watch it before watching this video. The link is provided in the description box. If you recall, in our last episode, we ended with the powerful statement, just as drop by drop makes up an ocean, thought by thought makes up a destiny. In this episode, we will be discussing the crucial role of belief systems and conditioning of our mind. So stay tuned till the end. I'm sure you have heard the story of the elephant and the blind men. Right?
Yes, I know the story of the elephant and the blind men, and I just love that story. It's so powerful and always makes me think about how we perceive things. In the story, each of the blind men touches a different part of the elephant. One man felt the trunk and said it was a snake, another felt the tail and said it was a rope, and yet another felt the leg and said it was a tree. The fourth touched the ear and said it was a fan, the fifth one touched the elephant's tusk and thought it was a spear, while the sixth felt the elephant's body and thought it was a wall.
Yes. That's perfect. Each one of them perceived the image of the elephant differently, and it's fascinating to think about how and why that happened. Each person felt something unique after touching a part of the elephant, and associated that feeling with their past experiences. They became convinced by what they thought was right and believed that their perspective was the only truth. However, they failed to see the bigger picture because of their limited perspective. Just like the blind men in the story, we all have our own perspective, and it's important to recognize that it's limited. Our thoughts, beliefs, and understanding can be conditioned by our past experiences and surroundings, becoming deeply rooted and making it hard for us to see the bigger picture. But when something challenging comes our way, it forces us to question our beliefs and perspectives, and that's when the levels of understanding come into play. Imagine if the blind men in the story had come together and shared their perspectives. They would have understood the elephant in its entirety, gaining true wisdom and understanding. According to the ancient Indian scriptures, humans can be categorized into 3 types based on their levels of understanding. These categories are Adhama, Madhyama and Uttama. Adhama is the lowest level of understanding. Madhyama is the intermediate level and Uttama is the highest level of understanding. In simple terms, I can say, it's like the undergraduate, graduate and postgraduate levels of schooling. People in the Adhama level are confined by their own biases and prejudices, just like the blind men in the story. Madhyama is the intermediate level, where we begin to understand that our perspective is just one out of many. For example, in the story, if 2 or 3 of the blind men comes together and discuss about what they feel, they would realize that each of them have different opinion about the same thing. There could be further discussions or debates. One with Adhama level of understanding would hold on to their original beliefs and would probably say, I know that it's a snake, and I don't have any doubt about it. While a person with Madhyama level of understanding would give a benefit of doubt and would be receptive to the other opinions also. Then he may come to a conclusion that probably the elephant manifests in different forms, like snake, rope and so on. Uttama is the highest level of understanding, where we can see the elephant in its entirety, all the different parts, and how they all work together.
And how do we reach this level of understanding called Uttama?
To reach this level of understanding, we must practice mindfulness and constantly question our own perspectives. We must be open to learning and growing, and not be afraid to challenge our own beliefs. And above all, we must strive for compassion and empathy, because it is only when we can understand and relate to the perspectives of others that we can truly understand the elephant in its entirety. Have you ever found yourself wondering why you hold certain beliefs or why you react a certain way to certain situations? The answer is simple yet profound. Our mind is like a canvas, conditioned, shaped, and colored by our past experiences, cultural influences, education, environment, and societal expectations, which leads to the formation of beliefs, thoughts, and patterns of behavior. These patterns of thought and behavior are often unconscious, and this unconscious conditioning often blindfolds us, preventing us from seeing the world with a clear and objective eye and hindering our ability to fully embrace and live in the present moment. True freedom lies in the ability to question and challenge our beliefs and thoughts rather than blindly accepting them. We have the power to break free from these limiting patterns. By questioning our beliefs and thoughts and engaging in self-inquiry, we can unlock the door to self-awareness and liberation. We can paint a new picture on the canvas of our mind, one filled with vivid colors, boundless possibilities, and true inner freedom.
So, everything starts with some belief system. Right? No one is a non-believer. It's only a matter of whether what they believe exists or doesn't exist, right?
Exactly. Let's take an example. Some people believe in the existence of God, while others believe that God doesn't exist. And then there are those who say, I don't know. They are the seekers.
Yes, once you believe, seeking ceases to exist. So what exactly is this belief system that we are talking about?
Life is full of uncertainty, and the mind finds comfort in narrowing down this uncertainty to a pattern of certainty. And once certainty is attained, we tend to follow a particular path. This shift from uncertainty to certainty is what we call the belief system.
But then, if I have to believe what you're saying, it depends on the convincing power of both of us, right? Some people may get easily convinced, while others may take more time, and some may not be convinced at all.
Precisely. It varies from person to person based on their belief system. When it comes to believing in the existence of God, it's better to say, I don't know whether God exists, than say God doesn't exist.
But, isn't the idea that God doesn't exist based on the lack of solid scientific evidence?
In a way, that's correct. Most of us don't get convinced without solid proof. But there is something bigger than proofs. And that's our own experience and observation. If I have seen a golden deer, I may not be able to prove it to you, but the fact is, I have seen it and that's my experience. So, I start believing in the existence of a golden deer.
That's true. And we tend to easily accept scientific claims because we believe that they have done enormous research on the subject.
Absolutely. For example, if someone in an authoritative position says that our body comprises of 100 trillion cells, we easily believe it. We don't sit and start counting.
So, it's basically that many have believed, so I too believe in that. That's interesting. So you're saying that science is also a belief, right?
In a broader sense, yes. Whether it's science or our own experiences, it's a convincible belief. At a particular point of time, for a particular period of time, you are convinced of a particular fact to be the truth. But what differentiates science from other belief systems is its approach. Scientific theories and explanations are not set in stone and can change over time as new evidence becomes available. When new evidence emerges that conflicts with existing theories, scientists will carefully examine the evidence and consider whether it is strong enough to challenge the current understanding of the topic. If the evidence is persuasive, scientists may revise their theories or develop new ones to better explain the observed phenomena. For example, Pluto was once considered to be the ninth planet in our solar system. But it was later reclassified as a dwarf planet due to new evidence that suggested it was not similar in size and composition to the other 8 planets. Similarly, the corpuscular theory of light, proposed by Isaac Newton, was later replaced by the wave theory of light, which was able to better explain certain phenomena such as the diffraction of light. The scientific process is not perfect, and scientists may sometimes make mistakes or hold on to ideas that are later proven to be incorrect. However, the self-correcting nature of science means that over time, our understanding of the natural world becomes increasingly accurate as new evidence is gathered and theories are revised. And this is why it is important for scientists to remain open to new ideas and evidence and to be willing to revise their understanding of the world as new information becomes available. For that matter, I would prefer to say that belief systems can be based on religion, science, personal experience, or a combination of all three.
Wow. So, belief systems come in many flavors. Religion, science, personal experience, or a blend of all three. But, like old habits, Our thoughts and beliefs need to be examined and reworked in order to unlock our full potential. As the saying goes, the mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master, right?
Yes. Our mind is a bundle of memories from our past. These memories shape the way we think and feel. Sometimes we are afraid of the future because we haven't experienced something similar before. We say, I'm afraid because I have never done this before. Right? So, you must not let your past experiences hold you back from a bright future. Challenge your beliefs and embrace the unknown with open arms.
Yes. So, can you tell us the key to breaking free from these limiting thoughts and beliefs?
Okay. Limiting thoughts and beliefs come from the conditioning of the mind. Do you know what conditioning actually is? And do you know how it works?
Yeah, but all I know is that conditioning is primarily of two types: classical conditioning and operant conditioning. But if you could explain it, it would be better.
Yes, that's correct. But before going into conditioning of mind, let's first understand how our behavior works. Behavior is basically a response to a stimulus. You generally react or respond when something provokes you to do so, isn't it? That something is the stimulus. But stimulus can be neutral or response-producing. What do I mean by that? When you drink plain water, you will not react to the taste of water. But what would be your reaction to the taste of sour candy? So, the taste of plain water is neutral stimulus, while the taste of sour candy is a response-producing stimulus. Now, that being said, let me tell you a story. The story goes like this. It all started with a concept called classical conditioning, discovered by Ivan Pavlov, a Russian psychologist, in the late 1890s. Pavlov came across this phenomenon accidentally while studying the process of digestion in dogs. He noticed that the dogs began to salivate even before they were presented with food merely upon the sight of the person who normally fed them. To investigate further, Pavlov decided to use a neutral stimulus, such as the sound of a bell, before presenting the food. He repeatedly rang the bell before feeding the dogs. After several combinations of the bell with food, Pavlov noticed that the dogs began to salivate at the sound of the bell alone, even when no food was presented to them. This demonstrated that the sound of the bell had become a conditioned stimulus, prompting a conditioned response of salivation. Pavlov's classical conditioning laid the foundation for modern learning theories, emphasizing the environment's role in facilitating learning. By studying the behavior of dogs, Pavlov discovered that animals could be conditioned to respond to certain stimuli in predictable ways. This groundbreaking research has since been applied to a variety of learning contexts, demonstrating the power of environmental cues in shaping behavior.
Oh, I see. So, in classical conditioning, a neutral stimulus, like the bell, was identified, which is a stimulus that does not naturally produce the desired response. Then, a response-producing stimulus, like food, was identified, which is a stimulus that naturally produces the desired response. The neutral stimulus is repeatedly paired with the response-producing stimulus. After repeated pairings, the neutral stimulus alone begins to elicit the desired response. The previously neutral stimulus is now considered a conditioned stimulus, and the response it produces is a conditioned response. Cool.
Yes. And then, in the 1920s, John Watson, an American psychologist, did something that made him a controversial figure. He tried an experiment on human being to prove that it's your upbringing, your education, and your environment, rather than your genetics, that conditions your mind. And for that experiment, he used a 6-month-old baby. It's known as Little Albert experiment. It was actually an extension of Pavlov's work to human beings, testing whether the same principles of classical conditioning applied to humans as well. Watson presented a white rat to a baby named Albert, and then made a loud, jarring noise behind the baby's head, causing Albert to startle and cry. Watson repeated this several times, pairing the presentation of the rat with the loud noise. Eventually, Albert began to cry at the mere sight of not only the rat but all furry things, even when the noise was not presented. It proved that Albert had learned to fear the rat through classical conditioning.
That's so cruel, to experiment on a baby.
Yes, it was indeed cruel. But if you see, we all are conditioned since birth to behave or think in a particular pattern. Yes or no? Say, for example, suppose you were brought up in an environment where you were constantly exposed to negative stereotypes about successful people. Maybe you were repeatedly told that wealthy individuals are selfish or dishonest. Over a period of time, this conditioning could lead you to develop a deep-seated belief that acquiring wealth is somehow immoral or wrong. As you grow older and start to make decisions about your career or financial future, this subconscious conditioning could hold you back, preventing you from pursuing opportunities for growth and success.
That is so true. And what about operant conditioning?
In operant conditioning, behaviors are strengthened or weakened based on the consequences they produce. That's when we learn to associate certain behaviors with positive or negative outcomes. For example, if you get a reward for doing something, you are more likely to do it again.
Ah, I see. So if I get a cookie every time I clean my room, I will be more likely to clean my room in the future.
Exactly. And if you don't get a cookie, you might be less likely to clean your room next time.
Well, in that case, I think I need to start conditioning myself to do more things that I normally don't want to do. Maybe I will start rewarding myself with cookies too.
That's a great idea. But just be careful not to overdo it, or you might end up conditioning yourself to be a cookie addict.
Huh? I will try to keep that in mind. Thanks for the tip.
Okay, now that brings us to the end of part 3 of this series on the human mind. But there is much more to come. In the next episode, we will see something about the mindset. So stay tuned. This is Anjan Muralidharan signing off. If you have liked this video, please do subscribe to this channel and like and share the videos. Have a great day ahead.